Welcome to the Boneyard with Steve Robertson. As always, I am your good friend and host, Steve Robertson, here on the Hump Day edition of the Yard. Hope you're having a great week. It's been a little different week, right? We've had so much going on for the last several months. I tell people all the time about the only time that we get any time off in our industry. I'm not whining, but it's July. That's it. Because, let's just say, for an example, we open up with fall camp, and goodness, I guess that'll be in July, the end of July. And then it's nonstop all the way through June. We have prospect camps, you got baseball portal stuff. In good years, you have postseason baseball. There's just a lot. Very blessed to do what I do, but there's not a lot of downtime, at least not for those of us that actually work for a living. But all that I understood, I think now is a good time for us to start talking about some football stuff. And so we're going to do that basically on every show between now and football. We're going to go ahead and start getting ready. I know many people are just kind of like, Steve, can we just talk about baseball portal stuff all the time? Well, we could, but we're not going to. And again, I don't think it's going to be a huge portal class most years for Brian O'Connor. Ran some numbers yesterday. The last 2 years that O'Connor was at Virginia, he signed 5 players in the portal each year. Last year was all pitchers. The year before he had, I think, 2 pitchers and a couple catchers and 1 position player. But he's not a huge portal guy. Now this year's different, obviously, as he's bringing some of his own players in. But, we expect double-digit portal guys when it's all said and done. But I think this season will prove to be an outlier in that respect. As O'Connor has said, he really wants to focus on high school players and development. And so a lot to talk about. But I don't think that baseball portal is going to keep us busy most summers. I think most Junes we're still going to be playing baseball. And we'll take a look at the Final 8 in Omaha. We'll take a quick look at that later in the show. But we're going to talk some football. That's what we're going to do today. And we're going to talk a lot more football here in the weeks ahead. But, we'll see how things go. I know many of you don't have high expectations for this football season. And to be honest with you, I don't either. I'm hoping we make a bowl game. And I don't like feeling that way because I love football so much. And I do like Jeff Labby and the staff. I do think they're working hard. And I do think we did a good job in the portal. Maybe perhaps not a great job in the portal, but we did a good job. But certainly up front, we're going to look like a different team. When you guys have a chance to see us, I think you're going to be pleased with the additions that we've had, especially up front on the defensive line and the offensive line. So we're going to look like an SEC football team. And let's be honest, we kind of got beat up last year in the trenches on both sides of the line. I think everybody would agree with that. There were some times last year down the stretch thought the offensive line played pretty well. But, a lot of that, too, was just, guys kind of figuring it out. But we did not have the girth and width really to be a force on the offensive line, and we certainly at times looked like we didn't know what we were doing on the defensive line because we had so many guys out there that just weren't SEC players. I spoke to one of our staffers recently, and I said, we talk about bringing a knife to a gunfight. We had a plastic knife at times last year. And so that's something to be considered about, maybe that's the right word. It's not the right word. To be encouraged about. I kind of got caught there. Sometimes that happens, right? You get something kind of grinded into gears and you engage your mouth before you're ready. But nevertheless, again, we're going to talk football on every show, and we're going to look today at kind of some of the early predictions for the Southeastern Conference. And then in the weeks ahead, we'll start breaking down our opponents and looking ahead to SEC teams and kind of what we think and expect from them. We'll do a little bit of that today, but we'll get more in depth with it because, let's be honest, when you get through the season, you're not even sure what everybody's going to have. And then you get to the spring and you think you've got a pretty good idea of what everybody's going to have. But now's probably a good time to kind of know what everybody has roster-wise. Everybody underwent a tremendous amount of change. And so that's going to be part of our breakdowns as we get ready to go. But, excited to be with you guys today. And, again, reiterate, hope that you guys are having a great week. I know many of you, your kids are out of school. You're making plans. You're going to go to the beach, laying out by the pool. And it's fun having the kids home. It is. Now, I'll be honest with you. I've worked from home for a long time now. I don't get lonely very often. I don't. Even when it's just me and the dogs here, I'm so busy with what I do. It's not like I'm sitting around feeling sorry for myself. But I can tell you those first couple of weeks when the kids were home from school were great. And Dana used to let, when our kids went to Christian school, the very first weekend that they were out of school, she let them go dye their hair for the summer. And it was wild, right? We let them express themselves a little bit. But, yeah, it was a good time. But I enjoyed them being home. Sometimes you just have somebody to talk to, but I love my kids. I do. I love my kids, and I enjoyed going to the summer matinee with them. I enjoy all those things, and being able to, hey, let's go get pizza today. And, there's always little things that you can do. It's not just about passing the time. It's making memories together. And so, yeah, I do miss that aspect of parenting. I've been an empty nester now for a little while, but I do miss those first couple of weeks when everybody's home and everybody's so happy and they sleep late and everybody's relaxed. And, for mom and dad, they kind of get us up and moving too, right? It's, hey, Dad, let's stay up tonight and watch this. Or, hey, I'm going to have, Justin over and let's play video games. I do miss that aspect of it. But I am enjoying my life, don't get me wrong. But for those of you that have your kids home for the summer and you're able to spend a lot of time with them during the day, be grateful. Be grateful, for sure. Those days will be gone before you know it. It's true. Let's thank our friends at Bulldog Burger Company, longtime sponsors of this show. We love Bulldog Burger Company, and I don't need my kids with me to go eat there. I enjoy eating there. I enjoy getting it there, and I enjoy getting it to go. There sometimes it's just more convenient for me to go grab me and Dana something to eat and bring it to the spa. And I enjoy eating with her too. I still like her too, And so they do such a good job packaging it up. Sometimes you get food to go and you get home and it's just a mess, right? It's not even appetizing. You say, well, it's all going the same place. I want to enjoy my meal. And when I get food to go from Bulldog Burger Company, it's always so incredibly well packaged. I get back to the spa, it's still warm. I don't have to go rush and put it in the microwave. They do such a great job. The Eat With Us group, what a gift that is to us here in the Golden Triangle, to have them to feed and nourish us. Drop by Bulldog Burger Company's one of 3 locations the next time you're in town or on the way to town. That's Stark Vegas, University Drive here in Stark Vegas, Gloucester Street there in Tupelo, Lake Harbor Drive in the Ridge and Flowood area. Have the spring rolls as your appetizer. They'll make you and everybody around you better looking. Get that chocolate shake to go. You can ride that ride home with a smile. And maybe everybody else is feeling like a burger. Maybe you're not. Well, I suggest a BLT salad. I prefer it grilled. You may like it fried. When I just want a nice little solid lunch portion, I don't like to overeat for lunch. I get that sloppy Joe slider palate. It's great. It's great. Great. Maybe get that with some onion rings. I'm not a big uncooked onions guy. You guys, it's well documented, right? As I've told people before, uncooked onions should not be a part of dining. That's my feeling. And it's not in the Bible, but it should be. Bulldog Burger Company, the place where people go to meet, M-E-A-T. Okay, let's, so our friends over at FanDuel have released their over-under, and there'll be some other ones. FanDuel Sportsbook, other people will release their stuff. And so let's get started at the bottom, which ironically is us. Yeah, they predict 3.5 wins for this Mississippi State team. Listen, I'm always a little bit more optimistic when it comes to the Bulldogs, really in every sport. I think it's realistic to think that we could get to 5 or 6 wins this year, but we're going to pull an upset somewhere. But we're probably going to have to win all 4 of these non-conference games, which in many respects makes that Arizona State game a must-win game. And that's an Arizona State team that's lost a lot from last year, but they returned some key pieces, and we'll break them down a little bit more in the weeks ahead. But again, just kind of looking at this, State's got a chance to get out of the gate no worse than 3-1. You'd love to be 4-0, right? And you say, well, Steve, we got to go to Southern Miss. And here's the thing. I do think Southern Miss is going to be better under Charles Huff. Matter of fact, I had a chance to meet their chief of staff over the weekend. I think Southern Miss is going to improve tremendously under Charles Huff. He did a good job at Marshall, as you guys are well aware. Huff is a good coach. He is. But I just don't think they're going to be ready in game 1. Now, will they have some haymakers for us and some trick plays and things like that? it's all brand new, right? It's like there's no continuity really at all. They got a bunch of transfers, and some of our people worry about that. But yeah, they got some guys coming in from Marshall that know the system, and that's helpful. I just think game one against an SEC opponent that's had a dramatic change in personnel, I just don't think that's going to be enough for Southern Miss. I know that they will be elated to have us there, but I think the Bulldogs win that game. Then you come home, you got Arizona State, Alcorn State, and Northern Illinois. Now, I'm going to go ahead and pencil in Alcorn State and Northern Illinois as wins, but we're going to have to beat Arizona State. I think that game may actually determine whether we get a bowl game or not. Those are my feelings today. Now, again, we may get a little deeper into this thing and we find a little bit more, but Arizona State returns to quarterback. They don't have Scatteraboo anymore. And I remember when the guy had the big game against us, some people were like, that just shows how bad we were. And other people were arguing, well, it just shows how good he is. Well, both things were true. And I think that's an important aspect to remember, too. They don't have him back. And he ended up getting votes for the Heisman Trophy. So for those of you that, kind of wanted to diminish his ability, it comes off looking, kind of sour grapey, After that, we have Tennessee come in, and that's going to be tough. Now, granted, they don't have the quarterback, and State played really well up there last year. We just couldn't stop the run. And that's one of the things that I remember thinking last year. I said, man, if we could just get a stop, then we would be in good shape. We couldn't. We couldn't get a stop. We got some early. But it's like when you go back and so how it is, when we lose, you kind of flush those games from your memory. I'm that way. I can't wait to move on. There are some people that say we live in the past, but I was very eager to move on from last football season. But we lose that game 33-14, But it was a game at the break. We're down 20-7, and you say, you know what? We just need to kind of make something happen here. They get a field goal there in the third to make it 23-7, and then State scores. Johnny Daniels scores on an 18-yard run to make it 23-14. You're like, if we could just get a stop and get back in this, we couldn't. They just kind of lined up behind that big offensive line and against our defensive front that was pretty hapless and just kind of mowed us down. But, it's going to be tough to beat Tennessee even here. But your best chance of beating them is probably this year compared to last couple years. Of course, quarterback situation's a lot different now. We got to go to A&M. I never would know what to expect when we go down there. I really don't. That'll be a lengthy trip. It always is. But I enjoy going to Kyle Field. But it's going to be tough. Then we get the open date. We go to the Swamp. It's tough to win on the road in the SEC. It is, but we're probably going to have to find a way to win one of those for sure. We'll get Texas coming in here. First time since the early 90s. Then we go to Arkansas. And to be honest with you, that may be our best chance at a road win. Maybe. And I know there's some people at Arkansas that think they should never lose to us. But they do. And we have beaten them with some regularity. And I honestly, I don't remember a game that we played in Arkansas in recent years that I felt like we were just outclassed up there. I really felt like we should have won even more than we have. And so, Sam Pittman saves his job last year. There were a lot of people wanting him fired 2 years ago. They did just enough last year to kind of hang around. And they like Sam up there. They do. I like Sam. Sam's a funny guy. And I think he's kind of an old school coach. But, you go back and look, at these games with Arkansas. And it really, for a long time, we had never won a game in the state of Arkansas. Then we kind of break through and we win there in Little Rock. And, Dak obviously had some really good success against them, as you guys are well aware. But, our last few trips to Fayetteville, I think we've been somewhat optimistic about each of them. Now, they absolutely smashed us last year, 58-25. But you go back and look. Let's just look at, since I guess we'll go 2013, right? So we win in 2013. Tyler Russell really hung in there and did a good job for us. Dak beats them in 15, 51-50. What a wild game that was. Beniquez, Brown, with the blocked field goal at the end there. In 17, Nick Fitzgerald goes up there and leads a bit of a comeback. We win that game 28-21. Dedrick Thomas with the big touchdown late. And then Joe Moorhead, again, I still to this day will never understand what Chad Morris ever did to Joe Moorhead, but Joe beat him unmercifully. In the 2 years Joe Moorhead was your coach, he scored 106 points against Arkansas. Now, they weren't very good back then, but Joe, we probably could have got 80 and went to Fayetteville. State wins that game 54-24, and they scored a couple touchdowns late to make it look a little bit better than it was. We missed that field goal in 21, missed 3 field goals, and that proved to be the difference. And then we go up there and win a 7-3 ball game, miserable game, as you recall, but we walked out of there with a dub. I remember thinking, I'm just so glad to get a win here. But we've had success in Fayetteville, and so I think that's probably the best chance at a road win. I just think it's going to be tough to go win at A&M and at Florida. Georgia comes in here, and I don't know what it is. Why can't we get away from Georgia? It's like the years when Georgia was just kind of middle of the pack, we never could play them, but now that they're at the top of college football, we got to play them every year, it seems. And then we go to Missouri. Now, Missouri lost a lot, and this should be a game that we should be up to play after the way they acted last year, especially Eli Drinkwitz. But it's tough to go to Como and win for everybody. It's just kind of a weird place. We've done it before, but I think we're going to be in a scenario where we go into the Egg Bowl probably needing to win the Egg Bowl to be bowl eligible. And I think that's probably the kind of best case scenario for us. You got to win the non-conference games. You win at Arkansas, and then you beat Ole Miss. I think that's probably the most realistic path. You never know. You may upset somebody or surprise somebody. But, again, I think I take the over on the 3.5. But I think we're going to have a little help to get bowl eligible. All right, we'll go a little quicker with the rest because we have a lot to cover. Vanderbilt is a team that's interesting. They had the dream season last year, and Diego Pavia was electric. Of course, he's in the center of all this legislation about junior college stuff. Their projected win total is 4.5. Now, in order for them to get there, I think they're going to have to beat Virginia Tech at Virginia Tech. They open up with Charleston Southern. That's probably a dub. You got to go to South Carolina at night. That's going to be tough. Georgia State should be a dub. Utah State comes to Nashville. You should get that. Then it's at Alabama. They're not going to sneak up on them. LSU. Missouri's in Nashville. At Texas. Auburn. That could be an interesting game in Nashville. Kentucky in Nashville. At Tennessee. And so I think I would take the over here. But I don't think it's one of those scenarios where they repeat last year. And then, we talked about Kentucky, an interesting game that could be. Kentucky is an interesting team because I never know what to expect. Of course, they've got a coach that doesn't appear to really want to be there, as you guys are aware. He supposedly was going to get the A&M job, and then things went crazy. I mean, not Tennessee crazy, but nonetheless, Kentucky's an interesting team. Their projected win total is 4.5. It's to be a great year for us to play them, but we don't. They get Toledo at home, and as we have learned ourselves, that's not a sure thing. They host Ole Miss, and of course, that'll be an interesting game too. I just don't think it's a good matchup because of the odd fronts that Kentucky uses. I think it's one of those things. He had a lot of success against his own read against Dan Mullen. He's having some success against Ole Miss. We'll see. I just don't know if Kentucky can score. They get Eastern Michigan. They go to South Carolina, go to Georgia. They get Texas, Tennessee, at Auburn, Florida at home, Tennessee Tech, at Vanderbilt, and then at Louisville. I'm kind of hedging this one. I think they'll go over, but barely. But I think that game in Nashville probably favors Vanderbilt. That could be a swing game for kind of both teams. So we're projecting those three teams not to make a bowl game. And then there's Arkansas that's kind of right there on the cusp. Projected win total is 5.5. They love that half, don't they? You can't win or lose a half game, right? But it creates a little more action, I guess, in Vegas. But Arkansas 5.5. And, again, I don't think it's going to be a great Arkansas team. But, last year they absolutely did whatever they wanted to do with us. Which, again, you look at it and say, you know what, if they beat us that bad last year, what are the chances of us going to their yard and finding a way to win that game? That's part of it. But I think this is a scenario, too, where Arkansas is probably a team, because of the fact that they love to run the football. I think they're not going to be able to exploit the same weaknesses in the Mississippi State defense last year. They did last year. I don't think there's any question about that. But, it should be a pretty good start for them. They should start out 2-0. They get Alabama, A&M, Arkansas State. They travel to Ole Miss. It's probably a loss, even though Arkansas has had some success against Ole Miss. They go to Memphis, which could be interesting. I mean, it absolutely could. Their fourth non-conference game is Notre Dame in Fayetteville. That's a loss, but what a good get for them to get a home with Notre Dame. They got to go to Tennessee. They host A&M. They host Auburn, and then Mississippi State. So there's going to be 3 straight home games for them ahead of the open date. We are the third one. So 3 straight home games, and they're going to feel like, hey, that's probably the key to our season. We got to win those games. They go to LSU, then at Texas, and then Missouri. That Arkansas-Missouri series has been very unpredictable. So that's the 4 teams they project not to make a bowl game. And I think that's probably reasonable, right? I think most people, other than the homers of those schools, would think, hey, that's probably a fair projection. Well, then you get Oklahoma. And what do you expect from Oklahoma? Those guys were not good last year. I think Venables is on the hot seat. I don't think that's a hot take. I think everybody kind of sees it for what it is. It was a very difficult schedule for them. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. But then they lose Jackson Arnold. And, of course, they didn't play at times with him last year. He ends up at Auburn, and we'll talk a little more about him later. I remember distinctly people projecting Jackson Arnold to be a Bulldog. And it's interesting how people could not walk that back, even though the facts fought against that. Of course, it didn't work out. And, of course, people go change their crystal ball pick at the last minute. We weren't wrong. No, you were wrong. You were wrong. But you were wrong when you said it. But the reality of it is this Oklahoma team, I think, probably needs to win more than 6 games to save Venables' job. I don't think there's really any question about that. Oklahoma is a proud football program. They always have been. They want to play for things that are of substantial nature. And I just don't know if that's really the case this year. I think they're going to really struggle with that aspect of it. I think it's one of those things when you think about the moving pieces, Oklahoma should always have talent on defense. I don't think there's any question that people will say that they're not a great recruiter. They have been. And Venables is a guy that can coach a little defense up there. But a lot of changes the last couple of years with the Sooners. No ifs, ands, or buts about that. And so I'm eager to see what this team looks like when they take the field. I think everybody probably kind of sees that for what it is. That could probably be the team you look at and say, you know what, they're probably the team most likely to make a coaching change in the Southeastern Conference. I don't know how you feel about that, but that's what I expect to be the case. They're going to open up at Illinois State. That should be a win. I think everybody agrees. You got Michigan. It's going to be a tough one. You got Temple. That should be a dub. And then the other non-conference game is Kent State. And that comes, a little bit later in the season. But, that game against Auburn, I think, is going to be interesting too. I think that's one of those things you look at and say, you know what, Auburn is one of those teams, it's kind of difficult to kind of figure them out. I think that's fair. But that's one of those games, it's really kind of a must-win game for both teams. I think you guys probably see it the same way. And, we'll talk a little more about Auburn. And there's some people a little more bullish on Auburn than they are Oklahoma. But this is an Oklahoma team that, again, kind of figuring it all out again. And if you're this deep into your tenure as a head coach, you shouldn't be figuring it out. You should kind of know what's going on by now. But I mentioned the Kent State game. They play, the Red River Shootout there in Dallas. They got to go to South Carolina. That could be a little bit dicey. Don't know what time it's going to be played, but Williams-Brice at night's tough. They host Ole Miss, go to Tennessee, go to Alabama, host Missouri, and host LSU. I think LSU is going to be pretty good this year. And so you look at that and you begin to think, okay, what's reasonable? Maybe 6? Is that enough? I don't think so. So they may beat the over-under, but I don't think it's going to be enough to keep a job there. That's just maybe what I think. All right, Florida Gators. Kind of a bounce-back year last year. Projected win total 6.5. Maybe that works out for them. I think they got to beat us in order to make that happen. I think that's only fair. And going to the Swamp's never easy. But, the Florida schedule is always a bit interesting. And, I say that just because of the fact that they do play a pretty aggressive non-conference schedule at times. They're not afraid to get out and go play. That's not really the case this year. And they get Long Island University to open. That's a dub. They get South Florida. That should be a dub. And then it gets interesting. They go to LSU, go to Miami. That could be 2 losses. They get Texas at home. Texas should be good. Then they got to go to A&M. Then Mississippi State. I kind of like where we're positioned other than the fact that they have an open date right behind us. They do have Georgia after the open date. Then they're at Kentucky, at Ole Miss, Tennessee, Florida State. So, you look at the non-conference schedule and say, you know what? Maybe you should be in pretty good shape here. But the reality of it is they have a real chance of going 2-2 in a non-conference. And that could set them up to be, maybe a 6 or 7 win team. I think we probably take the over here, but just barely. All right, Texas A&M, that's going to be an interesting deal too. And what's interesting about A&M is, for a stretch last year, people thought, hey, they were the team, right? And then they kind of fell apart, down the stretch. So let's take a quick look here. Probably not a bad first year for Elko. But they were in control of everything and had a chance to win the SEC last year and just kind of fell apart. That's the thing about this league. There's just no weekends off where you can just say, okay, well, this is all going to go our way, because it just doesn't work that way. I think that's probably a pretty fair assessment. But, looking back at last year, they were in great shape. And then they go to South Carolina and lose. They bounce back, beat New Mexico State, lose at Auburn, and then lose to Texas. So lose their last 3 SEC games after they were in complete control of the conference. Now this year, going to be a different year. I think everybody kind of sees that kind of for what it is. But, it's so crazy when you think about kind of what is to come for this team. Then lose a bowl game last year too. Finish up 8-5, right? And it's funny, everybody always projects A&M as kind of an 8-4 team. Is that fair this year? Looks to be about right. 7.5 is the projected win total. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it's not. But they open up with that Texas San Antonio. That should be a win. Utah State should be a win. They got to go to Notre Dame. And again, look at the Irish playing some SEC schools. Then you get Auburn, Mississippi State. I kind of like where we're positioned. I don't know if I'd call it a trap game, but they play Auburn, then State, and then Florida, and then they go to Arkansas, and then to LSU. The month of October is going to define the Texas A&M season. Off week. And then they go to Missouri, South Carolina, Samford, and then at Texas. So you feel like 3-1 in the non-conference, and then you got to get 5 in the conference. And you got some winnable games at home, but you got some interesting road trips. But I like A&M to be a little bit better. I think they'll be 8-4. I don't think they can get to 9-3. Maybe. But we'll take the over. South Carolina is interesting too. And let's be honest about that. How many of you guys expected Shane Beamer to still be there this year? Probably not very many. but Beamer Ball just keeps continuing to find a way to win. Now they'll get Virginia Tech. That's going to be a Sunday game, so we'll be able to watch that. Sunday game. That's I guess 2 o'clock Eastern. It'll be interesting. And then that game's going to be played, I can't remember, but it is a neutral site game. And then you get South Carolina State win. Vanderbilt goes to Williams-Brice. I got the Gamecocks taking that today. You got to go to Missouri. Tough. Kentucky comes in. Toss-up game. Got to go to LSU. That's tough. Oklahoma and Alabama back-to-back weeks. Then you go to Ole Miss and College Station, and then Coastal Carolina and Clemson. So they'll have the SEC hay in the barn by November the 15th and need to win those final 2 games. But, the over-under here, again, 7.5. Do you like them at 8-4? I don't know that I do. I think you got to beat Virginia Tech to make that happen. I think going to Ole Miss, going to Texas A&M, and to LSU are all very difficult. And then you've got the rivalry game with Clemson. So 7-5, 8-4, probably. Missouri Tigers also 7.5. Is that fair? Well, you lose Brady Cook, and give Drinkwitz credit. The guy knows how to coach offense up there. But they're a much different team with Brady Cook under center or behind center than they were with other people. They open up with Central Arkansas and then Kansas. The Kansas game, you can't just say, oh, well, they should win that game. Kansas done a pretty good job here in recent years. Then you got the Raging Cajuns of Louisiana. South Carolina's the SEC opener at home, and then UMass rounds out the non-conference. You got to think no worse than 3-1 in non-conference play. Can you go 4-4 in the league? I think that's a reasonable expectation. And the reason I say that, we talk about the South Carolina game. Well, then you got Alabama at home. That's going to be tough. You got to go to Auburn. That could be winnable. You go to Vanderbilt. That could be winnable. You got A&M coming in, Mississippi State. Of course, that's going to be State going on the road. And then at Oklahoma and Arkansas. So I think you look at this and say, yeah, they should probably get to 7 or 8 wins. I would probably lean more towards 7, and the over and under is 7.5. So let's take the under on that one. A lot of new starters on that team. Lots of new starters. We talked about Auburn. They're projected to be 7.5. And I think there are a lot of toss-up games on this schedule. And you never know what to expect from a Hugh Freeze team. Of course, they got Jackson Arnold in. I think there's a lot of pressure on Auburn this year. I think that's not a hot take. I think everybody kind of sees it for what it is. And you open up in a big non-conference game against Baylor and Dave Aranda. Mason Miller is offensive line coach there. So you're going to have some people that are somewhat familiar with kind of what's happening. That's going to be a Friday game before we play Southern Miss. So Friday night, you'll be able to see Auburn at Baylor. That'll be a lot of fun. But I think I'd probably take Baylor at this point. Ball State, South Alabama, those are dubs. You got to go to Oklahoma. Very much a toss-up game. Means a lot to both teams. Got to go to A&M. So that's back-to-back road trips in what should be rather hostile environments. Oklahoma fans won't have checked out by then. Georgia, that's a loss. Missouri, we talked about that one. That could be an interesting one. You got to go to Arkansas. Kentucky comes in. You go to Vanderbilt, Mercer, Alabama. And so the over-under for Auburn against 7.5, probably no worse than 3-1 in a non-conference. So can you get 5 more wins in SEC play? I think that's a big ask. I really do. I think maybe you're a 7-win team. Is that enough to keep you Freeze? Mississippi State, you can go 7-5 and just kind of roll around for a while and you'll be okay. Is Auburn going to take that? I think in order for that to happen, you probably have to win the Iron Bowl. Just my take on it. But, I do think Auburn's a bowl team. I don't think they're probably a Tennessee bowl team. Tennessee's projection, 8.5. 8.5 is your over-under there. So, we'll kind of break this down a little bit just because I think Tennessee, the quarterback situation is very unfortunate because of what happened with Amaleva. Him leaving after spring practice, that was not handled well. I think we all agree with that. There has to be some protection for the school. There has to be something in these contracts that at least runs through the season. That's how I see it. Maybe you see it differently, but it's not fair to lose your starting quarterback right before the spring game, and then you have to scramble in the spring portal. Tennessee gets Syracuse. They'll be playing around the same time we are. Also a neutral site game. Should be a win for Tennessee. They get East Tennessee State. That's a win. You get Georgia early, and if you're going to get Georgia, I think you want them early. The game is in Knoxville. It will be an afternoon game on ABC. I think Georgia's a better team, but could be fun. Then they get UAB. So a little bit later in the year, they get New Mexico State. So you look at this and said that they should easily go 4-0 in the non-conference. Right? I think you feel good about that. 4-0 non-conference. Probably your team at this point we're probably the most confident about going 4-0, even with the fact that they're replacing Dylan Sampson. I believe that's correct, but certainly with a brand new quarterback. But the schedule not real taxing the first couple of weeks, and Syracuse will come play some defense. But I think Tennessee will out-athlete them. After UAB, they got to go to Mississippi State, and they get an open date. And I haven't done the numbers on this, but the more I look at this, there's a lot of teams that have an open date after us. That's maybe a little bit of flaw in the SEC scheduling formula there. Not that anybody's going to feel sorry for us. Then you go and you host Arkansas. You're at Alabama, at Kentucky. Oklahoma, got to come to Knoxville. You went last year and got that big emotional win against a team that was pretty mediocre. You got to get New Mexico State. You got to go to Florida. That could be a big game late for both teams. And then Vanderbilt. So in order to get to the 9 wins, again, it's 8.5 to over-under here, you got to win 5 in the SEC. I think that's absolutely doable. I think they'll sweep the non-conference. Good chance to beat us. Good chance to beat Arkansas. Good chance to beat Kentucky. Good chance to beat Oklahoma at home. And a good chance to get Vanderbilt. So I feel pretty confident, not that I'm going to go lay money on this, that Tennessee will be a 9 or 10 win team. That's how I feel. Now, Ole Miss 8.5. This is one that I think is very intriguing. I think a lot of people are just kind of defaulting to the fact that Lane Kiffin has done a good job at Ole Miss, much to the chagrin of some of our people, but that's the reality of it. They've done a good job. You can say what you want to, but Lane Kiffin has put together back-to-back double win seasons. Kind of is what it is. And so a lot of people say, well, they always have this cupcake schedule. Well, I mean, they don't get to pick the SEC games. They don't. It's just not how it works. But let's break it down here and see what we think is fair. I don't know what you guys think is fair. And we'll be as objective about this as we possibly can be. And that's difficult to do sometimes for a Mississippi State guy. But this Ole Miss era is a little different. Jackson Dart, and you guys who listen to this show, I think that I have been fair to Jackson Dart over the years. I probably like him more than some of their fans did at times. The guy knows how to handle the ball. And I don't know that anybody carried out their play fakes in the SEC better than he did. He really made that misdirection zone read stuff very difficult to defend because he was so good at carrying out those fakes. He puts linebackers in conflict. There's a reason why he was drafted by the Giants. But Ole Miss, they get Georgia State right out of the gate. That's a solid mid-major team, but they'll smash them. And then you got to go to Kentucky. And this is where I think maybe Ole Miss may be at a disadvantage on the schedule side because a lot of other teams in the conference are getting 3 and 4 non-conference games early. And, Ole Miss used to kind of have that work in their favor too. But 2 of the first 3 games are SEC games against teams that Ole Miss hadn't had a ton of success with. That they've won some games, but it hadn't been games they've dominated. So they go to Kentucky, and remember Kentucky beat them last year. We all celebrated that. It wasn't a great Kentucky team. Then they get Arkansas at home, and Arkansas has been a real weird matchup for them because historically, and at least in the Lane Kiffin era, they haven't had a lot of beef up front, really until last year. They've kind of corrected some things, but Arkansas has been able to just run downhill on them historically. Then you get Tulane. Tulane didn't have their quarterback last year and still made it a game. Then you get LSU coming to Oxford, and then Washington State after an open date. So that's a nice little triplet right there for Ole Miss. Tulane at home, LSU at home, Washington State. So 3 straight home games, and you get an open date in the middle of the LSU-Washington State deal. So you expect to win those, and then you got to go to Athens, Georgia. And, obviously Ole Miss, big win last year over them. Not in Oxford this year. And, of course, Simmons, of course, had that big touchdown drive against Georgia to kind of keep hope alive in Oxford last year. You got to go to Oklahoma. We'll see. South Carolina in Oxford, not the easiest place to play. Then the Citadel, Florida, and then close out with the Egg Bowl. And, again, you look at the non-conference. Yes, they should win those. Washington State may put up a little bit of a fight, but they should go 4-0 in the non-conference. I don't think there's a lot of I think Tulane could make a game of it. John Summerall, good coach. They'll play good defense. I just don't think they have the athletes to match up there. But they should go 4-0 in the non-conference. And, again, the over-under here is 8.5, so essentially 9. Can you get 5 in the SEC? I think that's the real challenge. I think Ole Miss is probably an 8-4 team this year. Think about that. You got Florida and Georgia, and just from a talent standpoint, you would say those should be losses. LSU has to go to Oxford. LSU should be the better team, but going to Oxford in that rivalry type environment it's not a rivalry for LSU, it is for Ole Miss. Could be sketchy. And then you got to go to Oklahoma. And who knows at that point if Oklahoma fans have checked out or not. And so, is it possible to get 9? I think they're probably 8-4. That's what I think today. And again, you never know what shape these teams are going to be in. LSU has the same projected win total, 8.5. All right, so what does that mean? Well, I like the LSU schedule a lot better than a lot of other people do. LSU at Clemson to open this thing up, and that's a neutral site game. And LSU, it seems like they've been in these opening marquee type games. That'll be a 6:30 game, so we'll be able to head down to Hattiesburg, finish out that game, and probably get home to finish up LSU Clemson. I like LSU here. I do. I like LSU here. I think LSU has enough to win that game. And then you got a chance to go on a bit of a run here. Louisiana Tech, that's a dub. Florida at night. Tiger Stadium, athletically, both teams should match up. It's so tough to go win down there. I'm taking LSU. Then you got Southeastern. Then you go to Ole Miss. Probably a battle between top 25 teams, probably. Unless Ole Miss drops a game we don't expect. And they could with that Kentucky-Arkansas back-to-back thing there. Then you get South Carolina. That's a dub. You go to Vanderbilt. That's a dub. A&M coming to Tiger Stadium. That could be an interesting game. I think you favor LSU there. You got to go to Alabama. You never know what's going to happen there. Arkansas should be a dub in Tiger Stadium, even though those games have been really weird the last few years of the Sam Pittman era. He always gets the kids up to play for that Golden Boot. Western Kentucky should be a dub. Then you go to Oklahoma to finish this thing up. And I think you probably, if Venables is still coaching, I think he's coaching for his job. So I really think LSU has the ability to win 10, 11 games this year. I really do. And you look at the schedule, the road trip to Oxford and the road trip to Alabama, the most difficult within the conference for them, I think. And then the game against Clemson. I think they win that Clemson game, they're probably going to win 10. All right, let's take this time to recognize our friend Blair Chandler at closewithblair.com. Be sure to hit Blair up for all your mortgage needs, whether you're looking to buy a home or refinance a home. Maybe you need a home equity line of credit. Blair's the name to know. 601-500-2344. 601-500-2344. Get his 24 years of experience and expertise working for you. He can get you to the closing table when so many others can't. So get that pre-qualification letter. That's a nice life hack I never tell you about. That lets your real estate agent know exactly what you're approved for so you're not shopping above your means. It saves everybody some time. It does. So whether you're looking for your first home, your next home, or your retirement home, the name to know is Blair Chandler at closewithblair.com. Call or text him today directly at 601-500-2344. All right, now we're getting into kind of the big boys here. Texas, obviously, one of the better teams in the conference, one of the better seasons, really, in recent memory for the Longhorns. Sark's kind of got it going down there. I think it's pretty fair to say they should be back. Arch Manning under quarterback. I think you get excited about that if you're Texas. I mean, we had a chance to see Arch a little bit too. He can get out and run a little bit. Probably don't want him to run quite as much as they ran him last year. But, Sark's done a good job there. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. I don't know how anybody could argue against it. But let's take a look at the schedule. And we said last year around this time of year we expected Texas to be a playoff team. They were. So they're going to open up right out of the gate with Ohio State. That's a big one. Huge right out of the gate. Ohio State. That's going to be played the same time we are. Maybe you DVR that one. It's going to be tough to go up there and win. It is. And it's really going to kind of set the stage for the playoff run in week 1. Whoever wins that's going to have a leg up for sure. Then they get San Jose State, UTEP, and then Sam Houston. So 4 non-conference games to open the slate. They should be no worse than 3-1. You win at Ohio State, you feel really good about life. After that game against Sam Houston, they're going to get the open date. And then they go to Florida. Should be a win, but you never know. Going on the SEC road. Red River Shootout. Should be a dub. Go to Kentucky. It's always kind of a weird game there. They come to us, and then they go to Vanderbilt. So where we're positioned is not exactly great, right? They get an open date. They travel to Georgia. They get Arkansas at home, and then A&M at home. That'll be a big ball game, obviously. So you run through this, and you begin to ask yourself, okay, is this a playoff team? I think it certainly should be, especially if they win early, because you look at kind of who they avoid this year, but you have some playoff caliber opponents on your schedule to kind of prove your worthiness. But as we talked about, there's a handful of teams that they're projecting not to make a bowl game. Texas is going to play them all. Yeah. I mean, just kind of run it back there. Mississippi State, Vanderbilt, Kentucky, Arkansas, not projected to make a bowl. They're all on Texas's schedule. So they're going to have some weeks that they can probably, quote, get healthy. I like the way the schedule lays out. I like the open date before you hit the road to go to Florida. You got 2 weeks to prepare for that. Could be very significant. So, yeah, I like Texas to win 10 or more and to be in the playoffs. The Georgia Bulldogs also projected 9.5 win total. And people are like, well, there's all this change. And, the names change. The results really don't. Kirby's got it rolling really like nobody else does right now. I mean, you could argue some for Ryan Day, but there are some people that say that he wasn't going to be able to get over the hump. But the way this Georgia schedule lays out is one they should be excited about too. You open up with Marshall, and that's a team that's basically starting from scratch. That's a win. Austin Peay, dub. You go to Tennessee. I'm not sure Tennessee's going to be quite ready for that. Georgia will be. Then you get an open date before Alabama. Huge. So you begin to kind of work through this, and you think 2 of your 3 most difficult games come within 2 weeks of the first 4 weeks of the season in the first month, but you get an open date between them. It sets up beautifully. Then you get Kentucky. That should be a dub. You go to Auburn. That should be a dub. You get Ole Miss at home. Should be a dub. You get Florida. Rivalry game, you never know. You got to go to Mississippi State, should be a dub. You got Texas at home, that'll be a huge one. And then you close out with Charlotte and Georgia Tech. It's a near perfect schedule for Georgia. And again, they're going to win several games, and then they get just enough marquee appeal, but they get 2 of their 3 most difficult games against teams that I expect to win 10 games or so at home. So, good scenario for Georgia. We'll take the over there. Of course, you got Alabama. You guys are well aware. Alabama's a team that, it's kind of been the standard for excellence in this conference when it's come to football. As much as we don't always like it, kind of is what it is. But they took a step back last year, and everybody kind of projected that to be the case, and they did. They did take a step back in year one under Kalen DeBoer. So what does that mean, kind of moving forward? They dropped 3 games last year in the regular season, and then lost that bowl game to Michigan in the ReliaQuest Bowl. But, pumping for them to make the playoffs, and then they didn't. Of course, they went over Auburn late to kind of keep hope alive. But the game that really got them, Vanderbilt was big, but they kind of overcame that and were still in the mix. But then getting blasted by Oklahoma the way they did, kind of the swan song, I guess, for Jackson Arnold and Norman. This year, Alabama opens up against Florida State. Another one of those kind of made-for-TV games. Could be interesting, should be interesting. Louisiana Monroe, that's a dub. Then you get Wisconsin. That is a sneaky non-conference game that could be interesting. Wisconsin plays a very physical brand of football. They have to go down and play Alabama, though, in the heat of the day on a Saturday. We're going to take the Tide there. You get the open date. You go to Georgia. I think that's probably a loss. You get Vanderbilt, the revenge game. I suspect that'll be a win. You got to go to Missouri. That could be a little bit shaky because that's the sandwich game we always talk about. Who would have thought Vanderbilt would be a circle game on the Alabama schedule after getting embarrassed last year? You know that it will be. Then you've got a road trip to Missouri, and you know what the next weekend is? Yeah, it's the third Saturday in October, and it's Tennessee week. So revenge game, road trip, rivalry game. Missouri is in there perfect to kind of pull a surprise. There's something to watch. Then you got LSU, Oklahoma, Eastern Illinois, and Auburn. I'm not as bullish on Alabama as some other people are. They got a projected win total of 9.5. I'm going to take 9. I see 3 losses on this schedule. I think, you got to go to Auburn, right? That's always, it's always crazy stuff happens at Jordan-Hare. And, Hugh Freeze has always been a guy that values rivalry games. He'll have his kids ready to play. But that opener against Florida State and then the road trip to Georgia, that's tough. And then we talked about that little trio of games there in October before the road trip to South Carolina. You're going to host Tennessee, but I think there's a chance they drop one of those games. So I think Alabama's probably a 9-3 team, and I think the natives get a little restless there. But I know some other people are going to pick them to win the league. I'm not completely sold on that. And, we'll see what happens. But that's my thoughts on the current projections. And, again, next show we'll start kind of breaking down some of the teams kind of a little more extensively. The teams that we'll start with our opponents, and then we'll kind of get to everybody else. But that'll be a lot of fun, too. All right, time for today's Top 10 list. As always, brought to you by Kalido Guitars. That's CALIDO Guitars.com. Be sure and check them out for all your guitar needs, whether it's gig bags, cases, accessories, or guitars themselves. You can get electric guitars, acoustic guitars, classical guitars. It doesn't matter if you're a beginner or a pro or anything in between. Maybe you're a guy like me that just likes to plug in and play a little bit for the fun to kind of relieve a little stress. It's never too late to pick up an instrument. And maybe now is the time for you. So let's support some of our own. Kalido Guitars, owned and operated by Mississippi State folks in Lake Jackson, Texas. They're going to give you some incentive to do business with them, right? Promo code BSR, and you can use that in person, over the phone, or online. That gets you a 10% discount off your purchase, free shipping, no sales tax unless you live in the state of Texas, and they will make a 5% donation to the Bulldog Excellence Fund to help Mississippi State put better teams on the field. So you can be helping yourself to a quality instrument, unsurpassed level of expertise, quality service before, during, and after the sale just by using Kalido Guitars. Be sure and check them out today. You'll be glad you did. All right. Sad news in the world of American music. Sly Stone has passed away. Now we're going to go back a little bit. Sly and the Family Stone, really pioneers in many respects. They were funk. They were psychedelic. But man, they were a good time. And they were one of the first bands to really be integrated at a very tumultuous time in our nation's history. And they got grief from both sides about that, right? Even the Black Panthers are like, hey, you guys need to get rid of these guys. And other people were like, hey, you need to get rid of these guys. There was just so much of that from both sides. But Sly lived a very interesting life and had some drug problems. And one of the final shows for Sly and the Family Stone is they rented out Radio City Music Hall and had very, very, very few people show up. And it was kind of like, hey, this is it. And if memory serves me correct, they even had to bum a ride home. That's how bad the crowd was. But there is no denying the impact that Sly Stone had on American music. There would be no Prince, there would be no Lenny Kravitz, there would be no Bruno Mars and many others without Sly Stone. So we're going to pay tribute today to the music of Sly and the Family Stone. We'll be quick about it. Number 10, a song that we could all enjoy, and it really wasn't a big hit, but it is a great song. It's You Can Make It If You Try. Number 9, his sister sang this. It's Sing a Simple Song. And it's just kind of a song about happiness. Number 8, Hot Fun in the Summertime. We're almost there. I understand that next week heat indexes in the South are going to be 100. So Sly, that's for you. Number 7, an absolutely infectious bass line. And I've read that some people believe it is the most innovative bass line in the funk genre. It's If You Want Me to Stay. Right? And we've all been in that position before, right? It's true. But if you like good music and you like a cool bass line, that may be the song for you. Number 6, a song called Stand. And it's really not necessarily a song of rebellion, but it's really a song of empowerment. Now, you probably know the next 5 really well. Number 5, Family Affair. That was the number 1 hit on the Billboard charts for them. Absolutely love that song. I think you guys will enjoy it too. And that's really what Sly Stone and those guys were about. And ladies. It's about coming together. They were a band of unity. They were not a band of division. And there were a lot of bands in multiple genres in the late 60s, early 70s that were kind of revolutionary and militant. But Sly and the Family Stone was about enjoying life and about bringing people together. Number 4, I Want to Take You Higher. Love that song, man. And everybody, I think, from that era really does. It's like, hey, we kind of, you meet somebody and you think, I want to help you be better than you are today. I think that's what love is making each other better. Number 3, one of the most famous songs in the catalog. It was also a number 1 hit. And was really one of those songs they were somewhat reluctant to do, but it turned out to be a huge thing for them. It was actually sampled by the great Southern rap group Arrested Development. It's Everyday People, because I'm everyday people. And it's that whole different strokes for different folks. Like, it's become kind of a cliche, but that's kind of the genesis of it, is way back then, which Sly and the Family Stone, Everyday People, an absolute American classic. Number 2, also a number 1 hit, and Sly had 3 of them. Jammed this yesterday in his honor. And I would like to offer this to you as a humble moment of gratitude. Thank you for letting me be myself. And it's really, it's a song really about to other people. It's a song to people you love and song to people that love you. And they kind of see you for who you are and what you are. And they, rather than try to change you, they encourage you to be your authentic self. But number 1, and a lot of pep bands across the college basketball scenery have played this one. And again, to me, I think it typifies everything about Sly and the Family Stone. And it's Dance to the Music. And there's so many times in my life that that's really all I've had to do, right? To go and kind of turn things around, to enjoy some music. And sometimes me and the dogs get out here and we dance in the living room, It's hard for me not to have music on. It truly is. And it is the music for my soul in many respects. I think it is the flavor of life, great music. And some of my best friends, that's what we do, is we trade songs. And I loved having friends that appreciate other genres because they turn me on to some acts that I may not be familiar with, and vice versa. So that's your top 10 list today. And our thoughts and prayers go out to all the people that loved Sly Stone and the music of Sly and the Family Stone. Their last name really wasn't Stone. Stone was a kind of a take. So Sly's first group was called Sly and the Stoners. And then he just kind of stuck with it when they collaborated with his brother, who was also a great guitar player. And if you don't know much about Sly and the Family Stone, you can pull these videos up. The fashion is great. The music is great. But more important, of music and the celebration of life that I think makes Sly and the Family Stone such a classic band. And I don't know that they've gotten enough notoriety within this generation. And many of these songs you've heard and but maybe did not know that Sly and the Family Stone were the originators of that music. But there are a lot of people that have kind of picked apart and kind of made their own. They pulled some influence and pulled a little pepper, from the Sly Stone experience and kind of made it their own. But I love pulling up those YouTube videos, and you'll see him on these TV performances if they were fortunate enough to get him to show up. Because later in his life, Sly became very reclusive, and there was one tour I think he missed like a third of the shows because he was hopped up on cocaine or PCP or something, and he was a bit of a tortured soul, and a lot of our most creative people are. And this is the way that they emote, and this is the way that they heal. And some people can't handle fame, but Sly lived to be 82, and there are probably people in the 70s that never thought that was possible. But if you don't know Sly and the Family Stone, you should, because they are about loving life and celebrating life. And it's a sad day in that respect. But again, we honor that music. And if you have suggestions for the top 10 list, reach out to me or Roy Samanthi, who is the keeper of the list. He puts these great lists on Spotify. You can find him on X under Dogmatic67, DAWGMATIC 67. Spotify's got that same handle, and I'm on all forms of social media at Scout Steve R. All right, next segment of the show brought to you by Campus Bookmart, a Starkvillian institution. Man, I love going in there because I want to buy it all. I do. I want to win the lottery and just go. I'll buy it all out, and I'll send some of the stuff to you guys. You prefer the money, but you know what? I'm going to make sure you and your family are outfitted in the latest Mississippi State fashions. You can find that at Campus Bookmart, along with some great gift ideas. Everything you need to detail out your fan cave can be found at Campus Bookmart. And you'd be amazed at the things they can find with a Mississippi State logo or insignia on it. It's incredible. It doesn't matter if it's pins or whatever, shirts, they can find it all. And you probably need to update your wardrobe anyway. Many of us just kind of continue to wear those old T-shirts. That's why I have about 200 of them, is I keep a little rotation there. But as well as I do, your Mississippi State gear is precious to you. And you want to take care of it. You don't want to overwear it. So buy yourself something new. Mom, we're going to be taking that trip to Gulf Shores later this summer, and we need to rep the brand. So maybe you can find some Mississippi State merch for the kids, for yourself, and for Dad. He deserves it. Father's Day is coming up anyway, right? So I don't know how you celebrate, but let me speak on behalf of the dads out there. We want more Mississippi State stuff. We do. We do. We know you love us. We know you're going to get off cheap, right? We know you're going to buy some socks. If you're going to get us a tie, if you're going to get us socks, you're going to get us a shirt, let's get a Mississippi State thing, okay? That's what we really want. They won't tell you, but I'm telling you, you want to make Dad happy, get him some Mississippi State merch. You can order online at campusbookmart.net, and by being a Loyal Boneyard listener, we'll give you a phrase that pays. That is BSR, which stands for Beautiful Steve Robertson. That gets you free shipping on all orders over $75. Any order less than $75, absolutely incomplete. And if you don't spend $75 or more, you probably are short selling Dad. I'm just kind of saying it for what it is. All right, let's take a look at, we're still college baseball fans, and we're going to get into some more college baseball stuff. But Friday, the College World Series gets underway. That's June 13th, for those of you that need to know. And I say this all the time. Everybody in college baseball plays on Mother's Day, but only the great teams play on Father's Day. And so that'll be the case, for a few teams. So Friday, we're going to get underway 1 o'clock Central, Arizona against Coastal Carolina. Of course, Arizona got hot late, won the Big 12 tournament, and then made some hay running through the regional and the super regional, and they'll take on Coastal Carolina, who absolutely raked against Auburn. Those guys can really hit. And then there's Louisville and Oregon State. That's the nightcap. That should be a fun game. And again, Louisville, a team that's kind of been just hiding in the reeds the last couple of years, and now here you are. They don't have much in the way of NIL. And truthfully, Oregon State doesn't either. But they do allocate some resources for baseball. And again, I want to give Oregon State a lot of credit. They didn't have a conference. They didn't have a bunch of teams willing to play them or forced to play them to help them build an RPI. They did it on their own, and it was difficult. And Mississippi State actually reached out to their coach during our coaching search. He was a name of interest. And now here he is in Omaha. And if you enjoyed that Oregon State, Florida State Super, I think you can expect more of the same. Now, Oregon State is a team that is a little bit reliant on the home run, but they can really pitch. And it's not just about the numbers. Like, they really compete on the mound. And you got a guy that's worn the uniform. So Oregon State's already got 3 national championships. They're in a position to get another one. I won't be surprised at all if they win this side of the bracket. Matter of fact, I'm expecting it. Now, they may go 0-2 and make us all look foolish. But to downplay the work they did this year to put themselves in a position, constructing a roster, putting a schedule together, and then going out and playing at the level they did, you got to respect it. I do. Now, the other side of the bracket, which brings up some interesting conversation, right? I think Oregon State has the easiest path to get to the College World Series final. They're the only top 8 national seed on their side of the bracket. There's a couple on the other side. Coastal was a 13 seed, so you've got Arizona and Louisville that were not in the top 16 seeds over there. So I think Oregon State is in a good position. I won't be surprised if they end up playing Arizona in the winner's bracket game. But getting to the other side of the bracket, which is where the 2 SEC teams are, you got Murray State and UCLA. Of course, UCLA, some people didn't think they would host. I thought they would. Ends up being a number 15 seed. Well, they end up making it all the way through. Kind of quietly, too. They're going to take on America's team, Murray State. And you've seen the numbers. The coach there cuts the grass, gets paid about $75,000 a year. That outfield is in disrepair. And the pictures that I saw yesterday of that outfield wall are absolutely shameful. Somebody somewhere should have stepped up and taken care of that, whether you go out and raise some money or whatever. That's just ridiculous. But I venture to say for everybody that doesn't have a team in the tournament, they're going to adopt Murray State. And that was the thing last year, right? There was an AD on the D1 baseball committee last year that was all about growing the game. Well, we're not there this year, and guess what happens? We end up growing the game. But we did it organically. We didn't force it. And you still got your 3 Far West seeds, and 2 of the 3 made it because they earned it. They weren't gifted anything. They earned it. And now you've got UCLA, very storied baseball program, against Murray State, a team that had never won an NCAA regional, is now headed to Omaha. I saw the picture earlier of those guys on the plane headed to Omaha. I love it, man. And those guys can swing the bats, man. Ask the folks at Ole Miss. And for those of you that thought, well, it'll be cute and then they'll get killed. No, they didn't. No, they didn't get killed against Duke. And, of course, things have changed now at Duke as Chris Pollard has taken over as the head coach of Virginia. And now Chris Lemonis mentioned as a potential candidate at Duke. That could be interesting. But Murray State earned their way in without any question. On the road, they take the regional from Ole Miss. On the road, they take the super from Duke. And now they're going on the road to play UCLA and compete in the College World Series. I don't see them winning this bracket. I think the big ballpark probably hurts them a little bit because I think they're a little bit too reliant on the home run. Ole Miss would tell you they're a doubles team too. But I I think they could give UCLA some trouble. And, of course, that's the Saturday afternoon game, and I plan to watch them all. The nightcap, LSU and Arkansas, which has some people talking about, hey, we should reseed the field when they get to Omaha. No, we should not. The bracket is the bracket. We don't do it for any other sport. You don't do it in men's or women's basketball. You put out your 64-team bracket, and then that's the bracket. And now we get to the end of it, and there's some people within our conference that are upset about it. Well, it's not fair. That's the bracket, guys. We had 13 teams in the tournament. 13. And only 2 made it. And you only had 2 SEC teams go head-to-head in a super regional. So we really don't have any room to complain. We just didn't win enough. And you're like, well, it's just not fair. LSU and Arkansas have to play head-to-head. I don't remember anybody feeling sorry for us, and we had to play Auburn head-to-head. Do you? I don't. They're not going to set it up every year that we have an all-SEC final. It just has to happen that way. You got to win. And we had 13 teams, 13, that had a chance to advance, and many of them got knocked out the first weekend. And so we have nothing to complain about. Nothing. That's an important thing to understand here. So I've seen LSU people complain about it. I've seen Arkansas people complain about it. There's no complaints. The bracket is the bracket. Of course, when we went in 2013, there were some Ole Miss people that said, they should reseed the bracket. Mississippi State got too easy a draw. It's a 64-team tournament. We beat the teams that were in front of us. And we went and played for a national championship. We didn't win, but we earned our right to be there. And so, do I think LSU and Arkansas might be the best 2 teams in this tournament? Yes. They just happen to be on the same side of the bracket. So there's no chance of them playing for a national championship. And there are other people out there thinking, hey, Arkansas's path to get there is a little more difficult than, say, a team like Oregon State. Hey, you could see a rematch of Arkansas and Oregon State again when Oregon State came back after the Carson Shaddy drop, right? Arkansas now the consensus favorite to win the College World Series, which is probably a guarantee they won't. But it'll be interesting to see how this thing kind of plays out. LSU has elite pitching. You've seen Tanner Allen kind of advocating for LSU, saying, these guys are going to make a run here. I do think there is a good chance that your national champion is either LSU or Arkansas. That's how I feel today. And again, you don't know how well all this is going to translate at Omaha. LSU and Arkansas both play at launching pads. They do have some dudes that have some juice. I mean, Bayer at LSU, he could hit it out of Yosemite. So I think that translates well there. But there are some other guys out there I don't know that will. Derek Carrell's a guy that just hits baseball. One of the elite leadoff hitters in the country. But I do think LSU, Arkansas, one of those 2 teams is in the best position to win this thing. And you got to wonder, how much of your pitching do you have to kind of exhaust before you get to the College World Series final? I think, again, Oregon State has the easier path. But I don't know if anybody else on that side of the bracket is capable of taking 2 out of 3 from an LSU or an Arkansas. I don't know. Zach Root is on his game with that Arkansas bullpen they have. They're a team that'll challenge hitters in that big ballpark and I think have some success. We want to be there next year. I want to be there every year. I'm greedy. I know many of you feel the same way. And as fun as it is covering all this other stuff, I said at the beginning of the year, it's one of the reasons why I didn't commit to a book this year. We still got some things we're working on. But I told my agent, I said, I just can't commit to that because I may have to cover a coaching search. And then we do, right? And that's behind us now. But it takes so much out of us. I can tell you that. It takes a lot out of us to cover these coaching searches. But the portal stuff is fun. Brand new staff, you having to work hard, kind of get information, work industry sources and things of that nature. It's a lot to it. I would much prefer to be playing baseball right now than chasing information like that. Now, the portal's open for everybody, but you don't think about it as much when your team is still playing. We're already thinking about next year. These teams are playing for something meaningful this year. Now, did I think Mississippi State was going to get to Omaha this year? I didn't. I did think we could win a regional. We didn't. I thought when we went to Virginia last year, we had a chance to win that regional. I was a little worried about it because I didn't know if we had the pitching to kind of contend with that offense. And it all kind of blew up on us late. But I remember feeling that Saturday night or Sunday night, I'm thinking, man, if we get this thing to Monday, they don't have any pitching left. We got a shot. With our offense, we got a shot. Same thing I felt this year with Florida State. I said, man, if we could just get this thing to Monday and you get a 2-0 lead and you start thinking 2's not enough, but, man, I feel a lot better about being up 2-0 than being down 2-0. And ultimately, it unravels for us. And that's typically, it's one of those things, you kind of are who you are. And who you are will show up in the biggest moments, good, bad, or indifferent. We had some opportunities to expand that lead, some opportunities to close that game out. We didn't capitalize. And now it's been kind of the story of the season, right? And you probably had to feel like it kind of had to end this way for Mississippi State. But now we look forward to next year. All right, final segment of the show brought to you by the Stark Vegas Clubhouse, the best place to stay in the Golden Triangle when you're bringing a large group to town. And you need to make some memories. Life is long, or so we think, until you get on the back half of it and you realize, you know what? I need to let these people know how much I love them. And the way you spell love is Time. Spend time with those you love. Make some memories. You'll be glad you did. The Stark Vegas Clubhouse has afforded my family the opportunity to make some memories. We stayed there for New Year's, had a great time. We'll do it again this year. We had a great time there, and now we've got another new Robertson to celebrate, our grandson Warren. And so it'll be great to have all of his aunts and uncles and his grandparents together. And, you need to think about doing those things too. It's one thing, listen, as your family expands, right? I mean, your house, as well as I do, when you had your house, it was just enough. And then kids began to leave and you're able to spread out a little bit. Well, now when they come home, they bring people with them. So there's not always enough room to accommodate everybody. Rather than go through all that stress, just go stay at the Stark Vegas Clubhouse. You'll be glad you did, whether it's a ball game weekend, maybe you got some vacation time this summer, maybe you guys are expecting and you just think, hey, I don't want to be that far away. I don't want to take a big trip this year, but I'd love to be able to get out of the house a little bit. Get everybody together, get some food on the grill, order some food, use that full-service kitchen, the wet bar, the back porch area, the fire pit area. It's so great. Even in the summer months, it's nice to have a fire, right? It's true. We had a great time. You will too. 6 bedrooms, 2 soon to be 3 baths. That should be operational before football season. And be thinking ahead about that too. The Stark Vegas Clubhouse is available to book 365 days a year, provided there hasn't already been a reservation. So it's not like it's just a weekend getaway. Now, when you Google Stark Vegas Clubhouse, their Facebook page auto-populates. You'll have the opportunity to see pictures of all the amenities available to you and your guest. But also some booking options come up too. Airbnb, VRBO, you can go that route if you want to. But if you want to save some money, book through the Evolve website and use promo code BSR10. BSR10 gets you 10% off your stay. It's by listening to this show. It's Starkville's premier place, the best place to stay in the Golden Triangle. Make some memories with you and your family at the Stark Vegas Clubhouse. Okay, so earlier today, while we're getting our notes together for the show, the SEC announced our kickoff windows for football. So sticking with our theme for football, you guys are already aware the season opener on August 30th against Southern Miss is going to be 11 a.m. It's going to be an ESPN game. We already knew this. Game 2 is going to be 6:30 on ESPN2, so we'll have night football at Davis Wade Stadium and a chance to use those LED lights for the very first time. Hopefully we get a lot to celebrate. And that's a good thing, too, that we're getting one early in the year. A chance to kind of handle that because we do have some games, obviously, they're going to be in the afternoon. We're not going to have a lot of opportunity to use them this year. But that process is already underway. Now, September the 13th, we're going to play at 5. So maybe in the later quarters, we'll have an opportunity to use them. But 5 o'clock, I like nighttime football in September and October. I love daytime football in November. It's my feelings. You may feel differently. September the 30th, Northern Illinois, another home game for us. That's going to be 3:15. That'll be on the network. And so 3 of our first 4 games are going to be day games. So go ahead and begin to hydrate now. Mom, be thinking about getting that wicking shirt, We get in Tennessee. That's a flex window. So that's going to be basically, we'll see how the teams are doing, right? So it could be an afternoon. We'll be at A&M. It's going to be a night game at Texas A&M on October 4th. In the Swamp, it's going to be an afternoon game. So not an 11 a.m. kick, but it will be in the afternoon, probably, 3. Depends on how the teams are doing, but we'll be in the afternoon. The Texas game here is another TBA, depending on how the teams are going to do. The trip to Arkansas is going to be an afternoon game, so another day game. Georgia will be here. That'll be an 11 a.m. kick. So LED lights won't matter in that one either. We'll go to Missouri for a night game, and then, of course, the Ole Miss game, 11 a.m. on Friday. So not many opportunities for us to use this new lighting stuff. That's not to say we didn't need it. We absolutely do. We need to modernize the game experience as best we can. We don't need people sitting home, right? And here's what I say about that. Some people have to, and that's okay. I'm not trying to make you feel guilty. But we've got to entice people to come. We need to have a lit atmosphere. It needs to feel like a concert. I'm not a big NBA guy, but I've been to several NBA games. Saw LeBron play against the Hornets years ago. Took my youngest son and his sisters to see Ja play in Memphis last year, I guess it was, or 2 years ago. But the thing that I love about the NBA games is that when you're there, there's always something going on. There's always something to entertain. And I think you got to bring some of that to college football. The crowds are great. The action is great. But at times there's like some lulls, right? And again, I agree with some of our LED defenders and LED proponents over the years. When you look at what South Carolina has done at Williams-Brice, those night games are electric. And some of that is because of the LED lights and the sound show and everything else, everything that goes along with it. And so, winning games pack stadiums. But what makes a bigger impression on recruits and for future season ticket holders is that we commit some resources to ensuring that we have an absolutely electric game day environment. Now, I just read off the windows to you, and so we only got really 1.5 guaranteed opportunities to display those LED lights. And I can hear it now. We're going to have some of our people, we went and spent all this money and only got to see it a couple times. As we win and play more meaningful games, and you have 2 opportunities this year to play your way into a night game, could be a few more, right? And so that doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. Even though we don't get to use it a lot, doesn't mean we shouldn't have done it. We, in many respects, especially at Davis Wade, have kind of allowed some things to get a little stagnant. We added the balconies, which I thought was super cool. A lot of you guys that have them really enjoy those, the communal atmosphere of that. I think that is a really good thing. But for the rank and file fan, there hadn't been a lot of new amenities to the stadium. And I'm not being disrespectful or being critical, but we needed to do this. And the sound thing is something we're still working on. It's not something that we've abandoned. Last year they brought in some extra sound and maybe didn't work as well as intended. But it's not like people are just sitting on their hands. But it's important to understand the impression that we make on recruits, we make on donors. We need to show that the money's being well spent. We need to show that young people, they're going to have an electric atmosphere when they come to Davis Wade Stadium. And again, you're a big part of that. It doesn't matter how nice the light show is if there are no fans there to ring the cowbell. So it all works together. But it was a very positive decision. It was a surprise decision. We knew that it was coming at some point. We didn't expect it this year. And I like the fact that Zach Selman kind of pulled a fast one. And he even told us, some within the media, didn't know if we could do it this year. We found a way to get it done. Just like he found a way to get Brian O'Connor hired, right? I like people that are answer people. There are a lot of people out there that can point out the problems. but they can't find solutions. And that's one of the things. I worked for a guy years ago named Jim Sears. He had a great philosophy. In our staff meetings, you could not point out a problem unless you had a potential solution. It may not have been the ultimate solution or the one that we went with, but you couldn't just complain for the sake of complaining. You had to bring up an issue and then find a potential solution for it, because that opens some dialogue, right? Because anybody can complain, but not everybody can find solutions. And that's one of the things that I respect so much about Zach Selman, is that he has been a solutions-oriented guy here. And again, people forget he's only been here a short time. But, you take that first year and kind of figure some things out and get your legs under you a little bit, kind of learn the lay of the land. And now here we are making some pretty big moves. We've invested incredibly in football. And I read this stuff out there, and listen, I love you all, but some of you are so poorly informed about what's happening with football. I don't know that we've told football no since Jeff Lebby was hired. I don't know that we have. I think Jeff Lebby has been given every resource possible to ensure that he can put a competitive brand of football on the field. And that's with the portal, that's with facilities, it's with upgrades, staffing. I mean, whatever we've needed, we've done. And some people out there say, well, we're doing all this for baseball, it's going to be coming from football. That's not true. It's just not true. We're capable of committing resources to multiple things. It's not like the old farming family where we had to lay out all the bills on the table and just figure out which ones we can pay this month, and some had to wait for next month. There have been some times in our history we've been at that point. Now, we got to be good stewards of our money. Don't get me wrong. But we're not broke like some people want us to be or suggest that we are. And again, I think that's one of the good things about this whole O'Connor thing is so many people, so many walk-on experts about Mississippi State said Mississippi State would go cheap on the hire. Well, we didn't. Got the second highest paid coach in America, and the only guy that's making more is the guy that won the national championship last year. Solutions-oriented. If you hadn't done so, go to dutynoblebook.com. You can get all my sports titles there. You can get signed copies. And you can get copies of When the Bottom Falls. And it's interesting. I have had a bunch of messages here as of late. I had 3 yesterday about When the Bottom Falls. One, my wife had 2 ladies that came in to float yesterday. One of them did not know that I was affiliated with the spa. When I'm kind of loosely affiliated, which means that I help pay for it. But my wife runs a show. And they goes, hey, that's Steve Robertson. She goes, yeah, it's my husband. And said, I bought my sister When the Bottom Falls. She's 8 years sober. She loved the book. And then later that day, I had somebody else that hit me up on Twitter in my DMs and said, hey, I need to order a copy of The Dude for my dad. I got When the Bottom Falls myself, and I loved it. I just want to tell you, I hope that you write another book like that someday. I got a little bit longer, but yeah, I'm sure we will. And another guy hit me up and said he got his dad a copy of The Dude for Father's Day, wanted to commend me on the work on The Dude and on When the Bottom Falls. And I'm going to be honest with you guys, some days I have bad days. And it may not seem like on the show because I kind of get it together. I got a lot in my life to be happy about. But I have found, I told this to Dana last night, I found when I'm really, really tired, like when, and not just physically tired, but emotionally tired, that's typically when I kind of get myself in trouble from a mental health standpoint. Like I can feel myself kind of like dipping down into depression at times. And then lo and behold, yesterday I felt that. I was like, man, I really don't want to do anything. So I got busy with work. I wrote as many stories as I could. And along the way, I started getting these messages. It's so funny how that works. The moment will pass if we let it, right? Speaking of the Bride and the Spa, you can go float at True Rest Float Spa Starkville. I think she has 18 floaters today on a Wednesday. It's a busy day for us, especially in the midweek. And dial 662-268-7601. You can speak directly to her, get all your questions answered. You can book through her, or you can download the app and book online. Completely up to you. But many people the first time have questions. We encourage you to call. It's what she's there for. And things have been going great. Thank you guys so much. Father's Day special right now. 3 floats for $139. And he doesn't have to use them all. He can gift one to you, right? It could be a family event. Or he can come when he wants to. And so call her for more details. and come join us over at genespage.com. We're running a half off the annual subscription price right now. We'd love to have you come join our merry band of misfits over at genespage.com. But until next time, let's all live our lives in a way we make more friends than enemies, and people can see a difference in the way we live.